She bought him socks. Non-slip, beige, practical. He was the most powerful man she had ever been in a room with. And she bought him socks because she noticed he was sliding on the parquet. He never said thank you. He just wore them. Her name is Naomi Brewer. Black, brilliant, slender. A neurorehabilitation physiotherapist who had spent her career putting people back inside bodies that had stopped cooperating. She worked out of a private neurological institute in Manhattan, drove home after midnight most nights, and had learned a long time ago not to want more than what the work gave her. His name is So Jung-ho, the Sovereign, head of a criminal empire that moved money across 3 continents from behind a real estate front. A tiger tattoo in black ink running up the right side of his neck. Eyes that calculated everything and showed nothing. 6 weeks before she arrived at his penthouse, someone had tried to kill him. Not an enemy from the streets. Someone who knew which banister he held every morning on the way to the window. He survived. He didn't walk. Then Dr. Ashby made a phone call, and Naomi Brewer showed up at the 47th floor with her clinical bag and her cognac leather tote, and absolutely no idea what she was walking into. He fired the last 2 people who tried to help him. She wasn't planning to be the third. But what neither of them expected, what nobody in that penthouse saw coming, was what happened when the work stopped being just work. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click Join to become a member and help our channel. The rejection letter was 11 sentences. Naomi counted them twice in the dark of the parking garage because counting was something to do with her hands. 11 sentences for 6 months of work. She set her phone face down on the passenger seat and waited for something to shift inside her chest. Nothing did. Her landlord's email came 4 minutes later. $400. Effective next month. She picked up the clinical folder from the back seat. Patient notes from the day, neat and complete. Put it in her tote and drove home. It was 11:52 p.m., and she didn't cry. She had trained herself out of that a long time ago, and the training held. The next morning, she arrived at St. Mercer at 7:45 and found a man she didn't know leaning against the wall beside her therapy room door. Silver hair, tortoiseshell glasses, a white coat over a charcoal suit that cost more than her monthly rent. He introduced himself as Dr. Walter Ashby and said he had heard her present at the Spinal Cord Injury Symposium in March and had kept her card. She let him into the room. He set a single printed sheet on the table between them. Clinical data, a residential address, no name. He explained, a private patient, 6 weeks post-injury, severe incomplete T6 lesion, refusing institutional care, 2 previous physiotherapists already dismissed. Home-based sessions in a secured residence. Full discretion. The compensation figure he said next made her look up from the sheet. That's 4 months of my current salary, she said. It's meant to be. She read the sheet once more. A 47th floor address. She folded it along its existing crease and put it in her coat pocket. When do I start? She started Thursday. The elevator in the building required a key card she was issued by a man in a black suit who said nothing. The doors opened into a private foyer. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A skyline she had no time to look at because there was a man in a wheelchair positioned in front of it, his back to her, reading something on a tablet. He didn't turn around. She set her bag down on the side table, where the previous physio had apparently been allowed to set theirs. She found the tape marks on the surface. and opened the intake report. She read. She waited. After 90 seconds, she said, "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Saul." He turned the chair slowly. He was younger than she'd expected. Sharp jaw, single-lidded dark eyes that moved over her face with the unhurried calculation of a man who had spent a long time deciding how much information to give away. A tiger tattoo climbed the right side of his neck in dense black ink, the head visible above his collar. "The last one," he said. "Talked too much." "I know," she said. "I read her notes." He looked at her for a moment longer than was necessary. Then he moved the chair toward the therapy table. The first session lasted 42 minutes. She did the assessment without commentary, recorded her findings, asked 3 clinical questions, and packed her bag. At the door, she turned and said she would return Monday. He didn't answer. She took that as a yes. By the 3rd week, he was already in the corridor when she arrived. She noticed, but said nothing. By the 5th week, she had started arriving 7 minutes early. Not to see him, she told herself, but because the 6 a.m. traffic was lighter and the building's elevator system ran faster in the mornings. That was what she told herself. He noticed, but said nothing. They were both very good at that. The sessions had their own rhythm by now. She moved, he worked. Neither of them performed for the other, and because of that, something genuine was able to take shape in the space between the effort and the rest. He had stopped pretending the sessions weren't hard. She had stopped pretending she wasn't watching him the way she watched everyone she truly wanted to help. Not at the injury, but at the person carrying it. Week 6, Tuesday. He had made it to the parallel bars. Both hands, full weight, 7 steps before he stopped. Not because he had to, because he chose to. He let go, turned, and found her sitting on the bench across the room with her notebook open, not writing, just watching. "You didn't count," he said. "I don't count in front of patients." "Why?" "Because the steps aren't the point. What you're deciding while you take them is." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he sat back in the chair. That was the week she started writing differently in her notes. Not clinically, but carefully. Patient concealing fear of permanent functional dependency beneath demonstrated indifference. She wrote that, and then paused, pen still, because she recognized the description from somewhere else. She finished the entry. She closed the notebook. She told herself it was a professional observation and nothing more. She was wrong, but she wouldn't know that yet. At the end of that session, she was crossing the foyer to the elevator when Sung-min appeared from the service corridor. He was holding his phone. He showed it to her without preamble. A photograph, time-stamped 2 weeks ago, 57th Street. Richard Calloway at a restaurant table, sitting across from a Korean woman in a cream blazer. Naomi recognized Richard immediately. The woman she did not know. "Park Mi-rae," Sung-min said, Mr. So's former wife. Naomi looked at the photograph. Her fingers were very still. "She arranged the accident," Sung-min said. "The one that put Mr. So in that chair." He took the phone back. He did not say the rest because he didn't need to. The implication was complete. The man who had recommended Naomi for this case had been in contact with the woman who had tried to kill his employer. The elevator doors opened. Naomi stepped inside. She pressed the lobby button and rode down 47 floors without moving. That night, she went through everything. Her emails, her call logs, every record she had kept since Ashby had knocked on her door. There was nothing. Not a thread, not a name, not a forwarded message. She and Richard had not spoken in 18 months. She had not answered his one approach to the referral coordinator at St. Mercer 3 months ago, because the coordinator had mentioned it in passing and she had said, "I'm not interested in anything from Richard Calloway," and moved on. She could not prove any of that to someone who didn't want to believe it. She sat at her kitchen table with her hands flat on the surface and understood that she was going to be dismissed. She arrived at the penthouse the next morning at the usual time. The door was opened not by the house staff, but by Sung Min. His face was the same face it always was. Still, professional, certain. "Your services are no longer required," he said. "Your final payment will be processed today." "I'd like to speak to Mr. So." "That won't be possible." He didn't close the door immediately. He gave her 1 second to say something else. She didn't take it because there was nothing she could say that wouldn't sound like an argument, and she wasn't going to argue her innocence in a corridor. He closed the door. She stood there for a moment. Her bag was in her hand. Inside it, her clinical notes, his intake file, the rubber therapy bands she'd ordered specifically for his grip strength, and a spare set of the non-slip socks she had bought 3 weeks ago when she noticed him sliding on the parquet. She had bought him socks. She pressed the elevator button. She rode down 47 floors and walked out through the lobby and onto the street, and the morning came at her, cold, crowded, indifferent. And for the first time since the parking garage months ago, she cried. Quietly, walking, the way she had learned to. Not because of the contract, not because of the debt or the rent or the failed grant, because she had started to want to stay. Not for the work, for the man in the chair who stopped counting his steps when she was in the room. She cried for 1 block. Then she stopped. Chung-ho read the clinical notes at 2 a.m. He had asked Sung-min for Naomi's complete file the night before. Financial, professional, personal, and received it by morning. What Sung-min had assembled was precise. No contact with Richard Calloway in 18 months. Richard's back-channel approach to St. Mercer's referral coordinator, an unsolicited move Naomi had declined without knowing the full picture. A private investigator's report commissioned by Mire's legal team, obtained from a source inside the firm. Surveillance on Naomi, 6 weeks, concluding 0 contact with Mire's people. 0 awareness of any arrangement. Richard had given her name expecting her to fail. Mire had taken it expecting to use her. Naomi had walked into all of it without knowing it existed. Sung-min had included the clinical notes as an addendum. Chung-ho almost skipped them. He didn't. Week 1. Patient nonverbal but engaged. Proprioception intact at 60% baseline. Starting with passive range. Week 2. Resistance decreasing. Patient initiating end range holds independently. Progress ahead of projection. Week 3. Patient tested examiner 3 times during session. Each time, received clinical response. No emotional response. Testing ceased mid-session. Week 4. Patient concealing fear of permanent functional dependency beneath demonstrated indifference. Treatment approach adjusted. Prioritize restoration of patient's confidence in his own body rather than measurable function milestones. He does not need to be convinced he will walk. He needs to be allowed to try without an audience for the failure. He read that last sentence twice, then a 3rd time. No one had said that to him. No doctor, no specialist, no person in his organization. No one who had watched him in that chair for 6 weeks had looked up from the chart long enough to write that down. He closed the folder. He sat in the dark for a while. Then he told Sung-min to find her address. Sung-min drove him at 6:30 a.m. Chung-ho rode the service elevator of her building with a cane and without the chair. The first time he had stood for any sustained purpose outside the penthouse in 6 weeks. His legs held. They weren't reliable, but they held. She opened the door expecting her landlord. She found him. He was wearing the same white linen shirt, the same gray trousers. The cane was matte black, minimalist, the kind of thing he would have chosen. The tiger tattoo was visible at his collar. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "I want to finish what we started." She crossed her arms. "You'll need to be more specific." He was. He told her what Sung-min had found. He told her about Richard and Mireille and the investigator's report. He told her about the clinical notes, all of them, and what he had read at 2 a.m. in the dark. He didn't apologize in the standard way, because an apology was too small for what she had walked through, and he knew it. He said, "You were right about what I needed. I want you to finish." She looked at him for a long time. She had spent years reading people's bodies for what they weren't saying. She read him now. "Come in," she said. "I'll make coffee." They resumed sessions that afternoon. 3 weeks later, 9 weeks from that first Thursday, on a Tuesday evening, she was standing at the end of the corridor with her back to the window, the sunset coming in sideways and the city audible 47 floors below. And So Jung-ho let go of the parallel bar behind him and walked. 1 step. 2. 4. He kept his eyes on her. 6. 7. He stopped when he reached her. Not because he had to. She didn't move. She didn't count. He said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "I made a reservation." That evening, Sung-min drove them to the rooftop of Seoul Tower. Naomi had passed the building a dozen times without knowing what it was. The restaurant was empty except for them. Chung-ho had reserved the full floor, and the table was by the open edge, where the city spread out below them in every direction, and the sky had gone the color of a coal fire dying. They ate for 2 hours. She told him about the grant she had been trying to write. He told her about the first year he built the organization, when he had nothing except certainty and the ability to make people believe it. They talked like two people who had been waiting a long time to have a conversation and were now moving through it carefully, not wanting to rush it. The sun was at the horizon line when he reached into his breast pocket. The ring box was matte black, small, no logo. He set it on the table and opened it with one hand. He didn't kneel. He wasn't fully there yet, and he didn't pretend to be. He leaned across the table and said, "I'm still learning to stand, but I already know who I want to be standing next to." Naomi looked at the ring. She looked at him, at the tiger tattoo above his collar, and the surgical scar along his jaw, and the paddock on his wrist, and the cane leaning against the table, and the city burning behind him 47 floors in the air. She thought about the parking garage at 11:52 p.m., the rejection letter, the 11 sentences, the moment she had set her phone face down on the passenger seat and waited for something to shift inside her chest. Something shifted now. "Yes," she said, before he finished the breath. 47 floors below, Oh Sung-min's phone lit up in the dark interior of the car. One word from his employer. Done. He read it, set the phone face down on the passenger seat, and allowed himself, for exactly 4 seconds, to smile. She bought him socks. Not a gesture of love, not a signal, just socks, because she noticed he was sliding, and she was the kind of woman who noticed things and then did something about them. She never told him. She never asked for credit. She just showed up, session after session, and saw what no one else in that building had bothered to see: that a man surrounded by power and loyalty and fear was terrified of one thing: needing help and not being able to hide it. She wrote it down, not in a report, in a sentence. He does not need to be convinced he will walk. He needs to be allowed to try without an audience for the failure. He read that sentence at 2 a.m. in the dark, and at 6:30 a.m. he was at her door, standing, cane in hand, 47 floors away from everything that had protected him for years. He didn't send a message. He didn't call. He came himself. And on a rooftop above the city, he leaned across the table and said, "I'm still learning to stand, but I already know who I want to be standing next to." She never chased him. She never explained herself to anyone. She never performed or begged or made herself smaller to fit what the room expected. She simply made him feel something that no amount of power or money or loyalty had ever given him. She made him feel seen, necessary, worth standing up for. There is a name for what Naomi activated in Jung-ho. It isn't magic. It isn't luck. It's something that lives in every man, buried deeper than attraction, deeper than desire. A primal drive to be needed by the right woman. When it's triggered, he doesn't drift. He doesn't go cold. He stands up and walks to your door. Relationship coach James Bauer spent years studying exactly this: why some women become a man's deepest obsession, and why men leave others who love them just as hard. What he found is that the answer has nothing to do with looks or history or how much you give. It has to do with a specific instinct. He called it the hero instinct, and he built a program, his secret obsession, to teach women the exact signals that activate it: phrases, patterns, small gestures. The same kind of quiet, precise attention that made Jung-ho read clinical notes at 2 a.m. and arrive at a stranger's door at dawn. The QR code is on your screen right now. The link is also in the description and in the pinned comment below. His secret obsession, $49, 60-day guarantee, instant access. You don't have to buy him socks. You just have to know the secret. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been used as a pawn by someone from your past? Placed in a situation designed for you to fail, and discovered only later that you were never the target? Have you ever walked away from something real because the evidence against you was too fast and too loud, and only found the truth when it was almost too late? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about redemption, dignity, and love that survives betrayal, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.